While the current administration has big spending plans, $5.8 trillion for 2023 to be exact, how effective will the Fed be at bringing down inflation through interest rate increases? This is an important question, especially since the central bank is saying we should expect higher inflation for years. After dismissing rising consumer prices as transitory for nearly all of last year, while I have been saying inflation is a problem, finally the central bank has started raising interest rates in an effort to rein in inflation that is projected to keep rising. Nearly a year after inflation reappeared on the American landscape, higher prices proved anything but transitory. U.S. inflation, as represented by CPI, the Consumer Price Index, has grown 7.9% in the past year. That's the fastest year-over-year inflation jump in more than 40 years. The same Federal Reserve that assured us that inflation would be temporary is now saying that we should expect higher prices through 2024. The central bank's Federal Open Market Committee met 2 weeks ago to initiate the first of what many expect will be several interest rate hikes. In that same meeting, committee members submitted their projections for where they see inflation going for 2022, 2023, and 2024. The consensus view of the committee is that inflation will average no less than 4.3% for all of 2022, 2.7% in 2023, and 2.3% in 2024. This means the FOMC sees inflation remaining above the Fed's average inflation target of 2% till 2025. I do think it's important to point out that projecting 4.3% inflation for 2022 is a bit ludicrous, considering that we're currently at 7.9%. And as the situation in Ukraine continues, experts are projecting up to an 8.9% inflation rate for March. So we'd actually have to lower inflation all the way from 8% to around 1% by July and maintain that through the end of the year to hit their target of 4.3%. For example, Johns Hopkins economist Steve Hanke sees inflation remaining in the 6 to 9% range going into 2024. According to Hanke, inflation will remain high specifically because of the 40% growth in the M2 money supply in just the last 2 years. Regardless of what the real inflation numbers end up being, this change of outlook is significant. In a recent article for MarketWatch titled "The Fed Got Inflation Badly Wrong," Jeffrey Bartosh noted that as recently as 4 months ago, the central bank was projecting average inflation at just 2.6% this year. That's 40% lower than the inflation numbers that they're now forecasting for 2022. Bartosh said flatly that these are earthquake-like alterations for a conservative central bank that rarely makes changes in its forecasts. Essentially, the current administration is claiming, by setting record-breaking budgets for 2023, that they can both fight inflation and reduce the deficit by taxing billionaires. How many times have we heard politicians say they can spend more and still save us money? while I watch the current administration and the Federal Reserve at work to calm Americans down with plans to reduce inflation, it reminds me of being a boy by the ocean shore, trying to dig a hole while the waves rush in. No matter how fast and hard you dig, the water rushes in, filling up and collapsing your attempt. So just how likely is it that the Fed will be able to dig us out of the hole that we are digging, while the current administration keeps flooding that hole with big spending? Will the Federal Reserve be able to hit their target and bring inflation down to 2%? That is the question. Many retirement savers have turned to physical gold and silver as a way to hedge and diversify their hard-earned savings amid all of this uncertainty. To learn more about the benefits of owning physical gold and silver, I invite you to schedule a one-on-one web conference with me and my education team at AugustaPreciousMetals.com.
Hey guys, Joe Montana here with my man Devlin Steele. He and his team at Augusta Precious Metals are constantly putting out new information to keep you ahead of the game. Click subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay up to date. You'll be glad you did.